The afternoon sun was soft and warm, the kind that usually made the whole neighborhood feel calm. But that day something felt different. She felt it the moment she stepped off the bus with her grocery bags in both hands. The street was too quiet. The usual sound of kids laughing and playing was missing. And the people sitting outside their porches didn't seem as chatty as usual. She tried to ignore the feeling at first, telling herself it was just one of those days when things felt off for no good reason. But as she walked closer to the small corner store near her block, she noticed a small figure sitting on the ground beside the dumpster at first. She thought it was just a kid waiting for someone. Children often hung around the store asking customers if they could help carry bags for a little change. But something about the way this child sat made her slow down. His body was curled in on itself, knees pulled up tight, arms wrapped around them like he was trying to make himself as small as possible. His head was tucked down, his chin pressed to his chest, and his whole frame looked tired in a way no child should ever look. She paused a few steps away, her heart squeezing in her chest. She set her grocery bags down gently, not wanting to startle him. He didn't look up. He didn't even react. That was the first sign that something was very wrong. She cleared her throat softly, her voice gentle when she spoke. "Hey there," she said. "You okay?" No movement. Only the faint rise and fall of his back as he breathed. She tried again, a little closer now. "Sweetie, can you hear me?" This time the child lifted his head just a little. When he did, the sight almost made her knees weaken. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying for hours. His cheeks were streaked with dirt, and the rest of him wasn't much better. His hair was messy and tangled. His clothes were too thin for the weather and had small tears in them. She noticed a mark on his arm, something that looked like a bruise. Though she didn't want to assume anything yet, her heart ached. She crouched down to his level, moving slowly so he wouldn't feel threatened. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said softly. "I just want to help." "Are you hungry?" At the mention of food, the boy blinked, and his expression changed just a little. Hunger was something he couldn't hide. She reached into one of her bags and pulled out a small pack of crackers she'd bought for herself. She opened it carefully and held it out to him. He didn't grab it quickly like some hungry kids might. Instead, he hesitated, looking at her with a mix of caution and hope. She gave a small, encouraging nod. "It's okay. You can have it." Slowly, he reached out and took the crackers with both hands, as if he feared they might disappear if he didn't hold them tight enough. He ate them quietly, one small bite at a time, chewing slowly, like he was trying to make each bite last. Watching him broke something inside her. No child should eat like that. No child should look that scared. She stayed quiet for a moment, letting him eat and feel safe. But she knew she couldn't just walk away. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and she needed to understand what it was. After a minute or two, she tried again. "Do you live around here?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "Are you waiting for someone?" Another shake. "Do you know where your home is?" This time, he didn't answer at all. He just stared at the ground again, shoulders curling in like he wanted to disappear. The way he reacted made her stomach twist. It wasn't the behavior of a kid who was lost for a few minutes. It was the behavior of someone who didn't feel safe going home. She swallowed hard, choosing her words carefully. "Did something happen?" she asked gently. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I just want to make sure you're safe." His lip trembled, and for a moment she thought he might cry again. But he blinked quickly and held it in, like he didn't want to make any noise. That hurt even more to think he had learned to silence his own pain. She reached out her hand slowly. She didn't touch him. She just held it near him, open and patient. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're not alone right now." The boy looked at her hand, then at her face. Whatever he saw in her eyes, maybe kindness, maybe calmness, maybe the gentle warmth she always carried, something softened in him. He let out a tiny, shaky breath. "Can I ask you your name?" she said softly. He shook his head again, but this time it wasn't resistance. It was fear. She realized it instantly. Maybe he wasn't allowed to share his name. Maybe he'd been warned not to talk to anyone. Maybe he didn't trust adults at all. "Okay," she said quickly. not wanting him to feel pressured. "You don't have to tell me. You don't have to say anything you don't want to." She looked around. A couple of people walked past the store entrance, but no one paid attention to the child sitting alone by the dumpster. No one stopped. No one looked twice. That made her chest tighten. How many people had walked past this child today? How long had he been here? She tried again, taking a gentle approach. "Is someone hurting you?" she asked, her voice softer than before. The boy's breath caught. His hands froze. His body went still like a statue. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. But the fear in his eyes said everything she needed to know. She felt her heart crack wide open. She wanted to wrap him in her arms, take him home, and protect him from the whole world. But she knew there was a right way to handle this. She couldn't just pick him up and leave. She needed help, real help. The kind that would keep him safe long after today. "I'm going to call someone who can help you," she said quietly. "They're good people. They can make sure you're safe. Is that okay?" The boy looked confused, like he didn't know whether to run or stay. She quickly reassured him. "I'm not calling anyone who will hurt you, I promise. I'm calling people who protect kids." He didn't say anything, but his shoulders relaxed just a little. Maybe he wanted to believe her. Maybe she was the first person who made him feel like someone cared. She pulled out her phone, keeping her voice calm as she spoke to emergency services. She told them she had found a child who seemed afraid, hungry, and possibly neglected. They said they would send someone right away and asked her to stay with him until help arrived. She stayed crouched beside him, speaking softly to him about simple things like the warm weather, the birds on the power lines, the kids who usually race their bikes down the street. She didn't ask him any more questions. She just kept her voice steady and gentle, letting him know he wasn't alone anymore. When the authorities arrived, 2 workers came with calm expressions and slow steps. They introduced themselves softly, crouching just like she did, so they wouldn't tower over the boy. But the moment he saw them, panic flashed across his face. He looked at her like he was silently begging not to be taken away. She placed a hand on the ground beside him, not touching, but close enough for comfort. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'll stay right here. I promise." The workers approached with patience, explaining who they were and that they only wanted to help. Slowly, painfully slowly, the boy let them come close. They asked if he would go with them, just to make sure he was safe and cared for. He didn't answer. He just looked at her again. She gave him a small smile, warm and reassuring. "They're going to take good care of you," she said. "And you're going to be okay." He swallowed hard, then gave the softest nod, almost invisible, but enough. When one of the workers extended a hand, his small fingers hesitated before reaching out. He stood up slowly, his legs shaky, like he wasn't used to standing after sitting so long. As he stepped toward them, he turned his head and looked back at her, his eyes full of something she would never forget: fear, sadness, and a tiny spark of trust. She stood up too, though her knees were stiff from crouching. She gave him another encouraging smile. "You're brave," she whispered. "So brave." The workers thanked her for staying with him. They said she had done the right thing. They said the boy would get the help he needed. But as they walked him toward their car, her heart felt heavy. She wondered what he had gone through, what he had seen, what kind of home had made him so scared. She wondered if he had anyone who loved him. Anyone at all. Just before he got into the car, he turned around one last time. Their eyes met, and he gave the smallest nod. Like a tiny thank you from a child who didn't have the strength to say the words, she lifted her hand in a soft wave, her throat tight. The boy climbed into the car, and the door closed gently behind him. She stood there watching as the vehicle pulled away, hoping with everything inside her that he was going to a better place, hoping that someone would take care of him the way she wished she could. When the car disappeared around the corner, she finally bent down and picked up her grocery bags. But her steps were slow now, her mind full of the child she had just met. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. She didn't know what the future held for him. But she knew one thing with certainty. She had been meant to find him that day. And though she didn't realize it yet, the kindness she showed him would echo far beyond this moment. reaching into a future neither of them could imagine. As she walked home, she whispered a quiet prayer for him, a prayer that he would be safe, that he would find love, and that life would be gentler to him from now on. She didn't know it then, but the child she saved would never forget her. And one day, years later, he would come back into her life in a way that would change everything. He remembered almost nothing from before that day outside the corner store. But he remembered her. It was strange how some memories faded like faint drawings on old paper, while others stayed crystal clear no matter how much time passed. Even when he was moved from one place to another, from one unfamiliar face to the next, her face was the one steady thing in his mind. It was the only moment he could remember feeling safe, even if only for a short time, in the beginning. Everything after leaving with the workers felt blurry. He sat in the back seat of the car looking out the window as the neighborhood passed by, his small hands clutching the seatbelt. He didn't cry, not because he didn't want to, but because crying was something he had taught himself not to do. Crying made noise. Noise brought attention. Attention brought trouble. So he stayed quiet, staring at the rooftops and the fading sunset. Thinking about the woman who had knelt beside him and given him crackers, he didn't know why she had been kind to him. He didn't know why she stayed with him until the workers came. All he knew was that she didn't look at him with anger or annoyance or impatience. She looked at him like he mattered, like he wasn't invisible. That feeling stayed with him for years. The first place he lived, after being taken in, was small but clean. The couple who cared for him were gentle, but he didn't trust them at first. He kept his suitcase under his bed even though he only had a few things inside. He refused to hang anything in the closet. He didn't want to get used to anything. Getting used to something meant losing it later. So he slept with one eye open for a long time, waiting for something bad to happen. But the couple never raised their voices. They never grabbed him. They never punished him for small mistakes. They didn't force him to talk, but they gave him space to speak whenever he felt ready. Still, he didn't speak much. Not even at school. School was another world, loud and busy, filled with bright colors and the constant sound of kids laughing or arguing or running around. He felt like a shadow walking through hallways, always watching but never joining. Teachers tried to include him, but he sat quietly in the back, hoping no one would call on him. He didn't know how to make friends. He didn't know how to answer questions without being scared he'd say the wrong thing. But even when he sat alone, he often thought about Herth, the woman from the corner store. He remembered her warm eyes and the softness in her voice. When he felt scared or overwhelmed, he pictured her kneeling beside him, telling him he wasn't alone. That memory became a kind of anchor for him. It reminded him that some people in the world were gentle, some people cared. As time went on, he changed homes again. Then again, and again. Each move came without warning. He would pack his small bag and follow the worker to the next house. Some houses felt safe. Some didn't. Some adults were kind but busy. Others had too many children to look after, so he learned to blend into the background. With each move, he kept her memory alive like a tiny flame inside him. When someone raised their voice, he thought of her calm tone. When he felt lonely, he pictured her warm smile. When he doubted he mattered, he reminded himself that someone once cared enough to stop and help. He grew older, taller, quieter, and more aware of the world. He used to think he was weak for being scared so often. But one day a counselor told him something that stayed with him. You survived things no child should have to survive. That makes you strong, not weak. He didn't believe her at first, but those words eventually took root. Still, he carried questions inside him that he didn't know how to voice. Why did she help him? Did she ever think about him again? Did she know what happened to him? Would she even recognize him now? As he entered his teenage years, things slowly shifted. He found small moments of stability. A teacher noticed he was good at fixing things, computers, radios, anything with wires or buttons. She encouraged him to join an after-school program where he could learn more. He didn't speak much there either, but he listened, and he learned. The more he learned, the more confident he felt. He discovered that he could understand how things worked just by watching for a while. He liked the quiet concentration of solving problems, the way broken things could be fixed with time and patience. Maybe that was why he loved it so much, because he knew what it felt like to be broken inside, without knowing how to fix himself. He also grew more curious about his past. Not the painful parts, but the small, bright moment that changed everything. He asked a social worker once if she knew the woman who found him, but she didn't. Too much time had passed. Too many files had been moved or closed. The answer frustrated him, but he held on to hope. He believed that if he ever got the chance, he would find her somehow. Deep down, he wanted to thank her. He wanted to tell her she saved him. He wanted her to know he never forgot her. Life wasn't easy. Even as he grew older, there were days when he felt like he was fighting an invisible weight on his chest. There were nights when the past still woke him up, though he didn't always understand why. But each time he felt overwhelmed, he reminded himself that one small moment of kindness had changed the direction of his life. And because of that, he had learned not to give up. By the time he turned 17, he'd lived in more homes than he could count. He had learned how to stay polite, how to stay out of trouble, how to work hard, and how to keep his emotions hidden so no one could use them against him. He had also learned how to survive on his own without expecting anyone to stay. But one thing had never faded: the memory of her. He still remembered her voice when she told him he was brave. Those words shaped him more than she would ever know. He carried them with him like a quiet strength he could use whenever life pushed him down. When he reached adulthood, he was finally able to make choices for himself. He took a part-time job repairing electronics and saved every dollar he could. His coworkers liked him because he never bragged, never boasted, never acted like he knew more than anyone else. He just worked steadily, focusing on the tasks in front of him. Over time, he moved into a small apartment, a simple space with secondhand furniture, warm light, and a quiet atmosphere he had never known before. He didn't need much. He just needed peace. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to hope as he settled into a routine. He found himself thinking more often about the woman who changed his life, not in a sad way, but in a determined one. He wanted to know who she really was. He wanted to know if she was doing okay. He wanted to repay the kindness she gave him when he was too scared and small to understand what it meant. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she lived. He didn't know anything except that she had found him near the corner store and had spoken to him like he mattered. That was his only clue. So one afternoon he decided to walk back to the neighborhood where it all started. He didn't know if the store was still there. He didn't know if she still lived nearby. But he felt a pull inside him, something telling him it was time. When he got off the bus, he looked around slowly. Some houses looked the same, but others had new paint or new fences. The corner store still stood, though the sign above it was faded, and the parking lot had more cracks than he remembered. The dumpster was still there too, though it looked smaller somehow. Or maybe he had just grown bigger. Standing there brought back memories he didn't expect: the fear, the hunger, the heaviness in his chest, the hopelessness he used to feel. But then another memory rose above all the others, her voice saying, "You're not alone right now." He walked into the store and asked the cashier, an older man with tired eyes, if he remembered a woman who used to shop here years ago. He described her gently, talking about her kind smile, her warm tone, the way she had knelt beside him. The cashier squinted, trying to recall. After a moment, the man pointed toward a street a few blocks down. "I think someone like that lived over there. Haven't seen her much lately, though. Might still be around." It wasn't a promise, but it was a direction, one more clue than he had before. He thanked the cashier and walked out slowly, the late afternoon sun warming his back. With every step toward the street the cashier mentioned, his heart beat a little faster. He didn't know what he would say to her if he found her. He didn't know if she would even remember him. Maybe she had helped many children. Maybe he was just one of many, but he had to try. He walked past small houses, some with gardens in front, others with broken chairs on the porch. He studied each house carefully, looking for something familiar, searching for a sign that belonged to her. When he reached the end of the block, he paused. There was a house there, small, quiet, a little worn, but tidy. The yard was simple, and there was a wooden chair on the porch with a cushion that looked recently placed. Something about the house felt familiar. not because he had seen it before, but because it reflected the same warmth he remembered feeling from her. He stood at the edge of the walkway, staring at the front door, his breath caught in his chest. He had spent years imagining this moment, years wondering what he would say if he ever found her. Now he was only a few steps away. He tightened his hands into fists, then let them relax. He took a deep breath. He reminded himself why he had come, not to reopen old wounds, not to burden anyone, but to give gratitude where it was due. He walked slowly toward the porch, each step heavier and more meaningful than the last. When he reached the door, he hesitated. His heart pounded so loudly he could almost hear it. He raised his hand, clenched it for a second, then finally knocked. It was a soft knock, but strong enough to be heard. He stepped back and waited. He didn't know it yet, but this simple knock would become the beginning of something much bigger, something he had been unknowingly searching for his entire life. And behind that door was the one person who had changed his world without ever knowing. How deeply her kindness had touched him. She didn't open the door right away. For a moment, he wondered if he had made a mistake, if she no longer lived there, if maybe he had knocked on the wrong house entirely. A small part of him hoped she wouldn't answer, not because he didn't want to see her, but because facing the past, no matter how kind the memory, made his stomach twist. He felt the weight of everything he carried, everything he had survived, everything he wanted to say but wasn't sure he could put into words. Just when he thought about leaving, he heard slow footsteps from inside. The doorknob turned gently, and the door opened a small inch, just wide enough for someone to peek out. Then it opened a little wider. She stood there, older than the memory he held, with gray strands mixed into her hair and softer lines along her face. But her eyes, those warm, steady eyes, were exactly the same. She looked at him for a long second, as though trying to place him. He stood still, unsure how to begin. His heart thumped loudly in his ears, but he kept his posture calm. Her gaze moved over his face, his shoulders, the way he stood. Something in her expression shifted. It's a flicker of recognition that wasn't certain, but wasn't empty either. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked gently. The sound of her voice hit him like a wave. It was calmer than he remembered, but it carried the same steady warmth. For a moment his throat tightened. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. He swallowed, tried again, and managed a few shaky words. You helped me once," he said softly. She blinked, confused but patient. She didn't rush him. She didn't look annoyed or lost. She just waited, giving him time. He explained in slow, careful words that long ago, a scared little boy had been wandering near the corner store, hungry and bruised, unsure of what to do. Her eyes widened a little as he spoke, and she leaned closer, listening deeply. When he mentioned her kneeling beside him, asking if he was okay, something in her face softened. When he said she stayed with him until help arrived, her hand lifted slightly to her chest. When he finished, she stared at him quietly, her lips parted slightly in a soft breath. "You're that little boy?" she whispered. He nodded. She didn't move for a moment, and he wondered if she believed him fully. Then her eyes grew glossy, and she stepped forward, opening the door wider. "Come in," she said, her voice thick with emotion but steady. He stepped inside slowly. Her living room was small, warm, and a little cluttered, with blankets draped over a couch, books piled beside a chair, and family photos on the walls. It wasn't a fancy place, but it felt lived in, cared for, and comfortable. It felt like somewhere a kind person would call home. She motioned for him to sit on the couch. While she lowered herself into the chair across from him, she didn't stop staring at him, not in a rude way, but with the expression of someone who couldn't believe what they were seeing. For years she had wondered what happened to the boy she helped. Now here he was, taller, older, stronger, but still carrying the same gentle spirit she remembered in his scared little eyes. "I always worried about you," she said. "For a long time. I never knew what happened after that day. They took you in the car, and I prayed you'd be somewhere safe." He felt a tightness form in his chest. "I never forgot you," he said. "Not even once." Her eyes softened even more. She rested her hands on her knees and leaned forward slightly. "Tell me everything," she said. "Tell me how you've been. Tell me what your life became." There was no pressure in her voice, just genuine interest, genuine care. The kind of care that had once saved him. He didn't know where to begin. How could he explain all the years of moving? The nights when he lay awake listening for footsteps, the times he changed schools and felt like an outsider every time he stepped into a classroom. How could he explain the fear that clung to him like a shadow, the small victories he earned over time, the tiny moments of hope that kept him going? So he started simply. He told her about the first home he lived in, how he was too afraid to trust the couple even though they were gentle. He told her how he kept a small bag packed, always ready to leave because he learned not to get comfortable. Her face grew sad but kind, as though she wished she could have protected him then. 2. He told her about the different homes, the different people, the quiet spaces he fit himself into so he wouldn't take up too much room. She listened without interrupting, her hands clasped together in her lap. When he told her about school, the loneliness of sitting in a room full of children but feeling completely invisible, she nodded slowly, understanding something deeper than the words. She knew what it felt like to be overlooked by the world. He told her about the teacher, who discovered he was good with electronics and encouraged him. Her face brightened a little at that. "That teacher saw what I saw," she said softly. "A smart, strong child who deserved a chance." Her words made him feel something he hadn't expected seen, maybe in a way he never fully felt before. He then shared how he had grown older, how he worked part-time jobs, saved money, found an apartment, and created a quiet life for himself. She kept nodding, soaking up every detail, her eyes shining with pride. "You turned into a good man," she said. "I can hear it in everything you're saying." He didn't know how to respond. Compliments still made him uncomfortable, but hearing them from her felt different. It felt like something truthful, something earned. Then she told him her side. "After they took you," she said slowly, "I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. You were so small, so scared. I kept wondering if you had someone to hold your hand after that." She sighed and looked down at her hands. "I used to walk past that same corner store for months, hoping someone would tell me you were okay, but no one knew anything. Eventually, life kept moving, and I tried to let it go. But I never forgot." She looked up at him again. "Every time I passed a child who looked lost or frightened, I thought of you. I wondered if you ever found the safety you deserved." Hearing this made his throat tighten again. He realized she had carried the same unanswered questions that he had carried. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt full of memories, both spoken and unspoken. He didn't feel awkward. He didn't feel out of place. He felt connected, grounded, like something inside him had finally settled after years of drifting. After a while, she stood slowly and asked if he wanted some tea. He nodded, knowing she needed a moment to collect herself. She walked into the kitchen, and he listened to the sounds of cups and warm water. Her home wasn't fancy, but it felt warm, like a place shaped by someone who put care into small things. He looked at the family photos on the wall. Most were old pictures of her siblings, parents, cousins. He wondered if she lived alone, and the thought made something inside him ache. Someone so kind shouldn't be alone. Someone who gave so much should have someone to give back to her. She returned with 2 cups of tea, one for him and one for herself. They sat again, drinking quietly for a moment. She asked more questions about his life, what he enjoyed doing, what dreams he carried, what made him proud, what made him hopeful. He answered honestly, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to her. He wasn't usually open with anyone, but with her, he felt safe. She told him about her own life too. She had worked many years in a small office. She lost a few family members over time. She had some health issues but pushed through them quietly. She didn't talk about herself much, always shifting the focus back to him. But he noticed the small signs. Pills near the counter, a heating pad on the chair, a cane leaning against the wall near the door. He didn't comment on them yet. He just listened. After a long while, she sighed and looked at him with gentle wonder. "Out of all the people in the world," she said, "I never thought I'd see you again. I never thought I'd hear your voice, grown and steady like this." She paused, her eyes softening. "Thank you for coming back." He looked at her with the same warmth she once gave him. "I came because you saved me," he said. "You didn't just help me that day. You gave me the first moment of safety I ever felt. I've held on to it my whole life." She pressed her lips together, trying not to cry. "I only did what anyone with a heart should do," she whispered. "No," he said quietly but firmly. "You did more. You gave me hope when I didn't have any." She breathed in slowly, deeply, like she wanted to hold his words inside her, as the sun lowered outside the window. The room filled with a soft orange light. They talked for hours, sharing pieces of their lives as though connecting to parts of a story that had been separated for too long. He didn't feel like a stranger in her home. He felt like someone returning to a place his soul had been tied to all along. Eventually, she leaned back in her chair and said, "I hope you come back again. I'd like that very much." "I will," he said without hesitation, and he meant it. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door, moving slowly but steadily. As he stepped outside, she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You grew into someone strong," she said softly. "I'm glad I lived long enough to see it." Her words lingered with him as he walked down the small pathway and back toward the street. The air felt cooler now, but inside he felt warm, lighter. He had walked into her life unsure of what he would find. He left, knowing that he had found something more meaningful than he ever expected. Connection he had been missing for years. As he reached the sidewalk, he looked back at the house. She was still standing in the doorway, watching him with a soft, hopeful expression. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She waved back. He promised himself right then that he would not disappear from her life. The way life had once pulled him away from everyone else. He wanted to be there for her, the way she had once been there for him. He wanted to make sure she never felt alone. He walked away with a quiet determination. Growing inside him a determination that would change both their lives in ways neither of them expected. He stood on her porch for a long moment after knocking, unsure if he was ready for what came next. The sun was lowering slowly behind the houses across the street, throwing a warm orange glow on the small front yard. Everything felt strangely familiar, even though he had never been there before. Maybe it was because he had pictured this moment for so many years. Maybe it was because the idea of her had been a kind of home in his heart long before he ever tried to find her. He had spent years searching for her. But standing there now felt unreal. He kept replaying what he would say, how he would say it, but the words tangled every time. He tried to steady his breathing, but his chest felt tight. He wasn't nervous for the same reasons he used to be nervous as a kid. This feeling was something different. It was the fear that he might disappoint her, the fear that maybe she didn't remember him. Or worse, that she didn't want to remember. He felt his own hand tremble just a little. It surprised him. He hadn't felt this kind of deep, emotional shake in years. He learned to be calm under pressure, to hide his fears, to speak with confidence. But none of those skills could help him now. Not when he was about to face the person who had changed everything without even knowing it. He thought about walking away, telling himself he could come back another day. But something inside him refused to let him leave. He had carried her kindness with him through every dark night, every lonely morning, every difficult step forward. She had been the light he reached for in the back of his mind, even when he didn't know her name. He wasn't going to leave without trying. Then he heard movement from inside the house. Someone was walking toward the door. His heart skipped, and he straightened slightly without even thinking. He wasn't sure if he should step back or stand closer, so he remained exactly where he was. The knob turned slowly, almost cautiously, as if the person behind the door wasn't expecting anyone. He could hear the soft click as the lock slid open. The door opened just a little at first, then a bit more. And finally, she appeared. She looked older than he remembered, of course, but her face carried the same warmth he held in his memories. Her hair had more gray in it now, tied back in a simple way. Her eyes looked tired, like life had not made things easy. But they also held that same caring look the same gentle strength he had seen when he was only a boy. She blinked at him, confused at first. He didn't blame her. He was grown now, taller, stronger, with broad shoulders and a quiet confidence she wouldn't recognize right away. To her, he must have looked like any other man standing at her door. "Can I help you?" she asked softly, her voice rough from age but still kind. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out at first. All the things he had practiced saying disappeared from his mind. All he could do was stare at her, taking in the moment that felt too big to handle. She waited patiently like she had always done. There was no rush in her eyes, only patience and slight concern. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice shaking, even though he tried to steady it. "I didn't mean to bother you. You're not bothering me," she replied gently. "Are you all right?" He swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. "You don't know me," he said slowly. But you helped me once. A long time ago." Her brows pulled together as she tried to place his face. He didn't blame her for not recognizing him. He had been small then, scared, quiet, hiding behind bruises and worn clothes. He looked nothing like the man standing in front of her now. "You don't have to remember," he added quickly, afraid she would feel embarrassed. I found you, and I wanted to thank you." She stepped closer to the screen door and looked carefully at him. Something in her expression softened, like she was searching deeper than the surface of his face. "What's your name?" she asked gently. He told her. Saying it out loud in front of her made his voice break. He had said his name thousands of times in his life, but saying it here felt different. Almost like returning a part of himself that had been lost. The moment she heard it, she froze. Her hand moved to her chest, and her eyes widened. She leaned even closer to the door, as if she needed to be sure. "You," she whispered. "You're that little boy?" He nodded. Words were too hard to push out. Emotion pressed against his throat, too heavy to swallow. She stepped out onto the porch, her eyes filling with tears almost instantly. She looked up at him like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, gently, she reached up and touched his cheek. A motherly gesture she didn't even think about. "You grew up," she said in a voice so soft, it almost broke. "Look at you. You grew up." He let out a shaky breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Her touch, even after all these years, felt familiar in a way that he couldn't explain. "I never forgot you," he said. "Not one day." Her lips trembled, and she reached for his hand without hesitation. He let her hold it. Her grip was warm and slightly weak, but full of something he desperately needed: connection. "I worried about you," she whispered. "I hoped you were safe somewhere. I prayed your life turned out better than what it started as." "I owe everything to you," he said. "Everything good in my life? It started because of you." She shook her head, wiping a tear with the back of her hand. "No, I didn't do anything special. I just helped a child who needed someone." "You saved me," he said, and he meant every word. "You didn't treat me like I was invisible. You held my hand when I didn't even know what being cared for felt like." She looked down, overwhelmed. He could see the heaviness in her expression, the years that had passed, the struggles she carried, the loneliness she tried to hide. She had always been the kind of woman who gave more than she received. "Come inside," she said finally. "Please." He nodded and stepped through the door. The house was small and quiet. It had the kind of warmth that came from someone who took care of a place even when life wasn't easy. There were old blankets folded neatly on the couch, a few pictures on the wall, and a soft light coming from a lamp in the corner. It felt lived in, but also lonely. She motioned for him to sit. He did, placing his hands on his knees while she sat across from him, studying his face carefully. "You really never forgot?" she asked softly. "Never," he answered. "You were the first person who showed me real kindness. It changed something in me. It gave me a reason to believe I could be better than what I came from." She closed her eyes for a second, as if letting the weight of his words sink in. "I'm so grateful you came back," she said. "I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. I would think about you sometimes, wondering if you found peace." "I did," he said, "but it was because you gave me a chance." She watched him with teary eyes, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Tell me everything," she said. Tell me how life turned out for you." He smiled gently at her. "I will," he said. "But first I want you to know something." She nodded slowly. "I didn't come here just to say thank you," he said. "I came because I want to be here for you now. The way you were there for me." Her breath caught. She tried to speak but couldn't at first. Her hands shook slightly, and he reached out to steady them. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but I want to. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me a chance at a life I didn't think I deserved. I want to help you now. I want to be in your life." She wiped her eyes again, trying so hard not to cry, even though the tears kept coming. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "Just let me be here." She looked around her small home, then back at him. Her shoulders relaxed, and a slow, emotional smile spread across her face. "I'd like that," she whispered. He sat back, feeling something settle inside him, something warm and peaceful. All the years of wondering, searching, hoping it was worth it. Because now, sitting in this quiet room with her, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like he had come full circle. Like the lost part of his story finally had a place to rest. They talked for hours. She asked him about school, about friends, about work, about the kind of man he had grown into. He asked her about her life, about the things she had gone through, about the moments that shaped her. They laughed, they cried, they paused to breathe through the waves of emotion that kept rising. And as the evening turned to night, something beautiful happened. Something simple but powerful. The distance of years faded, and the bond between them, once formed in a single moment of kindness, found its way back. Stronger than ever, it wasn't just a reunion. It was the start of something new, the start of the life they were meant to share. Not by blood, but by a choice made long ago, by a woman who couldn't leave a child behind, and by a man who refused to forget the person who saved him. He returned to her house the next morning earlier than he expected. He had barely slept, not because he was anxious, but because his mind kept replaying the way she had looked at him, like she had been waiting for him without even knowing it. The sky was still pale when he parked his car near her home. There was a soft quietness in the air, the kind that made everything feel calm and new. Like the beginning of something important, he carried a bag with him, filled with small things he thought she might need: some groceries, a few vitamins, a soft blanket he picked out, because it reminded him of comfort. He didn't know if she needed any of it, but he wanted to show her through actions what words didn't always express well. When he walked up the steps, he didn't feel the same nerves as the day before. Now, there was a quiet certainty inside him, a sense that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He knocked gently, not wanting to startle her. After a few seconds, he heard movement inside. She opened the door slowly, and a warm smile spread over her face the moment she saw him. Her expression held a mixture of relief and happiness, as if she wasn't sure he would really come back. "You're up early," she said gently. "I wanted to see how you were doing," he said. She stepped aside and motioned for him to come in. The house was the same as the night before, quiet, cozy, clean, carrying the warmth of someone who took care of what little they had. But today it felt different. It felt like a place he belonged. She noticed the bag in his hand and frowned slightly. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I know," he said. "But I wanted to." She didn't argue. Instead, she took the bag slowly, almost tenderly, as if she understood the meaning behind it. She placed it on the counter and turned toward him with soft eyes. "Sit down," she said. "I'll make some tea." He sat at the small table near the window, watching her move around the kitchen. She moved a little slower than she used to, and he noticed she would sometimes pause, as if catching her breath. He made a mental note to check on her health later, maybe schedule something quietly. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he wanted to help. When she brought the tea to the table, they both sat in a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a quiet understanding, the kind only shared between people who had lived through something connected. "I still can't believe you're here," she finally said. "Yesterday felt like a dream. I've wanted to find you for years," he admitted. "I just didn't know where to start." She stirred her tea thoughtfully. "I never expected anything in return. I just wanted you safe, Mayim," he said. but that doesn't mean I forget who helped me get there." She looked down, her eyes shining with emotion. "You were so small," she whispered. "So scared. I still remember how tightly you held my hand." He looked at her with a gentle expression. "You were the first person I trusted." She covered her mouth for a moment, overwhelmed, and he waited patiently. When she composed herself, she reached across the table and held his hand again the same way she had done all those years ago. It felt different now, stronger, but just as comforting. "What happened after?" she asked quietly. "After they took you from that place?" He told her. Not everything at once, some memories were still hard to speak, but enough for her to understand. He talked about the moving, the quiet nights, the moments of doubt, the teachers who helped him, the friends he made later, the times he had to push himself harder than others. He told her about his work, his goals, the life he was building. She listened carefully, absorbing every word like each detail mattered to her. And it did. It mattered more than he realized. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "So proud. You built a life for yourself, because you showed me I deserved one," he replied. They talked for hours. The day passed without either of them noticing the time. At some point, he found himself fixing a broken cabinet door in her kitchen while she sat nearby telling him stories about her younger days, stories full of hopes, challenges, and the strength she had learned to carry on her own. He noticed things around the house she probably didn't mention. The old pipes that rattled, the weak light bulbs, the uneven floorboard near the hallway. Little things, but clues to a life where she always put herself last. "You don't say much about yourself," he said gently after a while. She smiled a little. "I never thought my life was important enough to talk about." "It is to me." She looked surprised by the seriousness in his tone. "My life's been simple," she said. "A lot of working, a lot of helping people when I could. Not much else." "You deserved more than that," he said quietly. She looked down, unsure how to respond. He didn't push further. Instead, he helped her clean up, fixed a loose drawer, and even replaced the light bulb above the sink. She watched him move around the house with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "You do too much," she said softly. "I'm not even close," he replied, as the afternoon sun softened. They sat together again, this time in the living room. She leaned back on the couch with a tired sigh. "You've had a long day," he said. "So have you," she replied. "Mine was worth it." "You don't have to come every day." "You have your own life." "Maybe so," he said. "But part of my life includes you now." She blinked, surprised. "You mean that?" "Yes." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I didn't just come to visit or to say thank you. I want to be part of your life. Factually part of it. I want to make sure you're okay. I want to help you with the things you shouldn't be carrying alone." Her eyes softened, but he could see she was trying to hold back tears again. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're someone who saved me. You're someone I care about. Let me be here for you." She held his gaze, searching his face as if she needed to check if he was truly sincere. When she saw he meant every word, she slowly nodded. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "More than I can say." He felt something loosen inside him, something that had been tight for years. She wasn't just someone from his past anymore. She was part of his present, and he intended to make her part of his future too, as evening approached. He stepped outside to make a phone call. He spoke with someone briefly about setting up a few things for her house maintenance. Medical appointments, small improvements. He didn't plan to tell her everything right away, but he wanted to make sure she had the comfort and support she deserved. When he walked back inside, she was sitting in her chair, looking peaceful. She looked up at him with a warmth that made his chest feel full. "You came back," she said softly. "I'll always come back," he replied. The next weeks unfolded in ways neither of them expected. He visited her almost every day. Sometimes he brought groceries,